It's 3:30 Apple time.
Yes,
We
sir.
might as well get started.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. You have some reading. Go. I think it's Jewel, you're first, right?
Yes, sir. I'd like to begin by
Okay.
taking a roll call of the board members. Mr. Allen? Mr. Allen?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Bonfils?
Present.
Mr. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Koblis is here. Mr. Moody is not going to be able to attend today. Ms. Sursikar?
Here.
And Mr. Sultan?
Here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board, staff, and members of the public. After my statement, the chairman will open this meeting and explain the rules for the electronic meeting. Please keep your microphone on mute when you are not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. Board members should check to make sure the microphone is not muted before speaking. At any time, you may text me at 540-336-3948 during the meeting if you need technical support, and an IT tech will call your cell to assist. I now turn the meeting over to the board chairman, Mr. Koblis.
Thanks, Jewel. Now I'm going to immediately turn it over to our legal counsel, Jonathan Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In accordance with the Governor's State of Emergency Declaration and executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors Continuity Ordinance and the General Assembly 2020 Budget Amendments 28 and 137, Loudoun Water will meet today in an electronic meeting. In compliance with these special procedures, only action items necessary to continue operations of Loudoun Water and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities will be discussed during today's meeting. Reports and other meeting information are available on board docs. If board members have specific questions that relate to the impact of the pandemic or those sorts of things, certainly feel free to raise those questions or express those concerns. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available both on the Loudoun Water website and in board docs following the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, my statement now is during presentation, staff will pause for questions and discussion. There will also be an opportunity for discussion after each presentation, and we will also monitor and recognize the hand raise. For each action item, a roll call voice vote. Boy, say that fast. A roll call voice vote will be taken by the board secretary. Opportunity for public comment was provided within the meeting notice. Any written comments were provided to the board secretary and will be read during the public speaker's agenda item. Please request the board secretary to read into the record any written public comments during the public speaker's period. Okay, so the first thing to do here is have a motion to approve the minutes of the last board meeting.
So moved.
A second.
And
Sean, second.
okay, roll call, Jewel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Allen?
I approve.
Thank you. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Mr. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Koblis?
Yes.
Ms. Sursikar? Ms. Sursikar?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous, sir.
Okay,
With
great.
the absence of Mr. Moody.
Okay, so board member comments. I'll go ahead and start. First, I want to thank Sean for the leadership that he has given these past 4 years as chair. I've learned many, many things from you, and I hope to continue your Loudoun Water direction during my term. Thank you again for the board selecting me as chair. I'll serve you to the best of my abilities. I hope everyone had a great 4th in celebrating our United States, and I'm sure none of you used illegal fireworks in your backyard. Also, I hope everyone and your families have been safe and healthy and continue to practice social distancing and wearing of masks. It's very important now. Just a reminder about on this, using this Microsoft meeting, it's best if you mute and shut off your video unless you're talking. That way people don't see what you're doing in the background. And like, Bill, I'm looking at your neck. So that's another thing. You might want to look at what you look like on the screen too. I try to put a light on me and I'm looking at it. I'm saying, oh my goodness, I look yellow with jaundice with this light. So maybe I'm going to turn off this thing. And don't forget to put a background. I have a blurred background on mine, and that's again those 3 dots. You can change the background. This could possibly be our last virtual meeting. We're not sure. Obviously, it depends on the second wave of what's going on, and also what the governor decides. And I kind of left it up to, for the next board meeting, I left it up to Carla. Remember, we're going to be on summer break during August, so the next board meeting technically won't be till the second Thursday in September. And I put it out to Carla and her group if they would like a virtual meeting then. Of course, it all depends. We don't know what's going to happen. And then as far as the committee meetings, I'll leave that up to the chair of the committees, whether they want to do it virtually or in person. Again, I would consider the staff of what they really want to do. Speaking of committees, Jewel, I'd like to enter into the record our committee members that was sent out. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to read the committee members or whether it's just a document, or how does that work? And Jonathan or Jewel?
Mr. Chairman, I think the committee assignments were circulated by email, and that's sufficient. It doesn't have to be read into the record.
Okay. All right. With that, Terry, is any comments? Why don't you go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any comments at this time.
Okay, Jim Bonfils.
Just a couple comments. I'd like to thank Sean for his 4 years of leadership and his continued leadership on this board. And congratulations to you as chair. I did only one thing that was a little bit educational for me. I had the opportunity to be in Currituck and visit their wastewater and drinking water treatment plants, and we are way ahead of them. So I thought I'd mention that. So that's all I have, and hope everybody had a good 4th. And I yield the floor.
Bill Byers.
Just congratulations to you, Mark, for your election as chairman. And I would say bankers really should always be in charge. I thought Sean did a great job for 4 years. Because, I think it's pretty obvious that the bankers know what's going on. But no, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Brent, I know you're a long way away. Go ahead.
Yeah, happy 4th to everyone, and I don't have anything else to add, so thank you.
Okay. Sean?
Phone on here, the microphone on here. I got the camera on. Now I got the microphone on. Thanks, Mark. And thanks for your kind words. I really appreciated your support and help as vice chair. It made the job a lot easier. I also appreciate the support and help from Jewel and Carla and her staff. It was very enjoyable, and also the board. Thank you very much for your confidence in me as chair. It was an enjoyable experience. Now I get back and get to shut up now. You won't have to listen to me drone on anymore. Congratulations, Terry. You'll make a great vice chair. Keep Mark on the straight and narrow, if you would, please. You got a tough job ahead of you. No, I think you'll both do a terrific job. I leave the board in very capable and competent hands, and I think you guys will do a terrific job. And happy 4th, everyone. Hope everyone's staying well and wearing the masks and avoiding crowds.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Marty?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
I'd like to congratulate Mark and Terry on their new jobs. I think Terry's got a big job ahead of him, keeping Mark in tow, but it's possible. I think I'd like to also congratulate Sean. I think he was a steady hand and did an excellent job as chairman. And the only other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to repeat what I've said a number of times. Staff is doing an excellent job of keeping this place running without a hitch, and I think they deserve some compliments. And lastly, I'd say engineers should be in charge, contrary to what Bill Byers said.
Okay, Angeline?
Well, happy 4th, first to begin with. My husband went all over our deck and put our flag all over our deck. When I woke up in the morning, he was all in the spirit, so it was really nice. Sean, it's been wonderful working with you as a chair, and I look forward to working with Mark and the rest of the board. I too want to just take a moment to thank our staff there who are doing a tremendous job in keeping, everything that's operational. So a huge applaud to you. Thank you.
Okay, so general manager's report, Carla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Just a few quick items for you. You may have seen in the local newspapers an article about the Board of Supervisors taking some action to initiate a comp plan amendment that would allow the extension of central utilities into certain areas of the rural policy area. It's important to note that that would only be allowed for public facilities like schools, fire rescue, police stations, and parks. And the parcels have to be, again, publicly owned and immediately adjacent to the western boundary of the transition policy zone. And so we like to bring that up because some of the articles, it paints the picture as if Loudon Water is going to extend utilities into the rural policy area. And just keep in mind that we only extend our facilities where and when the county authorizes us to do so through land use. We decide how. That's our role. So if you see that article, or if anyone is talking about that, it's specifically related to county-owned property. And what brought this up was the county has some land in what we refer to as the donut. It's right off Red Hill Road near our 600 zone tank. And they would like to put up a middle school there and would like it served by Loudon Water. And so that sort of started that whole process moving. This week we did receive the referral request from the county. And staff will be responding to that by the end of the month. I also wanted to let you know that at the next CIP meeting, which will be the last week of August, we're going to make a presentation on our planning efforts for the JLMA, the Joint Land Management Area around the town of Leesburg, which we are now the preferred provider based on the latest comp plan. And also through that comp plan process, there were portions of areas that were in the rural policy area that were brought into the transition policy area that we will now be required to serve. And so we just want to bring you up to speed on where we are with the planning for those areas, what that looks like, and just let you know that, you know, it's sort of business as usual for us. We're rolling along and planning as we would for any area of our service area. Let's see. We continue to keep a close eye on the metrics to see how this pandemic is affecting Loudon Water, how it's affecting our customers. We do have a significant balance of accounts that are due. We're going to do what we can with those. We certainly will be notifying customers. We don't want them to fall so far behind that it just becomes impossible for them to pay. We've created 322 payment plans to date, which are a direct result of this pandemic. At the August Finance Committee, we'll be presenting the updated 5-year plan of finance, and that will be an interesting look to see how this situation is affecting us financially. And to be honest, it's a little early to tell, even but when we get to the end of August, it's still going to be a bit early, but we are keeping our fingers on the pulse of that. And finally, I do want to thank you for your compliments for staff. And I would like to go on the record as well to say that it just really, I'm so proud of their efforts during this situation. There's challenges and they've stepped up to meet them. And, you know, it's probably transparent, or at least we hope it's transparent to our customers that we are dealing with challenges on a daily basis, but there's no complaints. Well, if there are complaints, I don't always hear them, but their work has been nothing short of amazing. And I couldn't be more proud to come into work every day as their general manager. And so with that, if you'll recall, I'm going to tee this up for Jonathan to talk a little bit about conflict of interest. At one of our CIP meetings, this topic came up, and it was brought up as it related to subcontractors on a contract. And so Jonathan is going to cover that for us so that we're all clear going. Thanks. Jonathan?
Thank you, Carla. During the May CIP meeting, Ms. Sursakar raised a very good question about disclosure of subcontractors and making sure that that information is provided to the board as part of the package that's brought forward to you for approval of contracts, particularly in the construction contracts that frequently come before you. And wanted to give you an update on that, and also a very brief refresher as to what the Conflict of Interest Act requires of the board members. So with regard to the Conflict of Interest Act, there is a requirement that if a member of the board or your immediate family, which would include your spouse, domestic partner, or a child under the age of 18 years, has a personal interest in a contract, you must recuse yourself from participating in the consideration and approval of that contract. And the personal interest is defined as meeting one of the following criteria. If the board member or immediate family is an employee of the contractor or is negotiating to become an employee of the contractor, if the board member or immediate family has a ownership interest in the contractor of 3% or greater of the equity, or if the board member or immediate family member has an annual income of $5,000 or more from that contractor. Those are the circumstances during that would trigger a requirement that you recuse yourself from participating in the consideration of approval of that contract. And of that contract. Now, the Conflict of Interest Act also includes subcontracts as meeting the definition of contract. So it's an appropriate concern, as Ms. Ursakar raised, that if the subcontractors are known, then we should identify them to the board members so that you can make a determination as to whether you have a personal interest in those subcontractors that would require you from recusing yourself in consideration of the prime contract. So going forward, the engineering staff will include as part of the staff report for any contract approval the identification of any subcontractors that are known related to that particular contract. In most cases, unless Loud and Water is specifically requiring the contractor to use a particular subcontractor or to identify certain key subcontractors, we don't have that information, and it doesn't trigger any issues under the Conflict of Interest Act. But in all cases where we do have the information identifying any subcontractors, we'll make sure that that is included in the materials that come to you, board members, before the committee meetings and the board meetings, so you'll be able to determine whether there is a conflict and you'll have to recuse yourself. Be happy to try to answer any questions on that, but appreciate Ms. Ursakar raising that issue during the CIP meeting.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I have one question. Sometimes in these construction contracts, they may change subcontractors midstream. Is there any requirement related to that?
No, really the only time the issue will come up for the board members is at the time of approval. I suppose if we did come back to the board for an amendment to the contract, we should also identify any known subcontractors then. But if it comes up after the fact, after you've made the decision to award the contract and there's not any further action required by the board, then it doesn't have any impact on the conflict of interest.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Jewel, any public comments?
No, sir, we didn't have any public speakers.
Alrighty. I need a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Allen?
Approved.
Thank you. Mr. Bonfils?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Byers?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Koblis?
Yes.
Ms. Ursakar?
Yes.
And Mr. Sultan?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous with the exception of Mr. Moody.
Okay. Talk about the last CIP committee. I've asked Marty to discuss it. So go ahead, Marty.
I didn't catch what you cut out.
I was saying it's for you to go ahead and go through the CIP committee meeting minutes.
Okay. Let me, you want to see my smiling face. The first item that we took care of in the CIP committee was the upper Foley generator replacement. There's a 14-year-old critical pump station. It's experiencing recurring mechanical problems with its backup diesel generator. The only parts that are available are remanufactured and don't have sufficient warranty protection. Therefore, the staff determined that a new generator unit is needed. In conjunction with that, staff concluded that controls and ventilation improvements would be desirable to be done at the same time. 4 bids were received with Trump Electric as the responsible low bidder. They have experience in several similar projects in this area. The CIP committee recommended award to Trumbo Electric for $359,000 with a 10% contingency controlled by the GM for a total of $395,000. And the committee voted to have it included on the board consent agenda. The second item is approval of a planning task order for the 600 zone capacity. Now, the 600 zone demand has exceeded previous projections and is expected to continue rapid expansion. Also, a review of emergency or maintenance operations is needed to manage supply during facility outages. The study that's being considered will include a demand analysis to characterize existing and future peaking and diurnal factors, pumping and operational analysis, and the study will also include fire flow capacity with major facilities out of service. Staff selected Hazen and Sawyer, a firm that has extensive experience with Loudon Water's model and demand analysis. As a result, the CIP committee recommended approval of a planning task order for the 600 zone capacity analysis with an estimated cost of $103,600 with an approximate 10% contingency controlled by the GM for a total budget of $113,000. The committee recommended that this be included on the consent agenda. And lastly, Mr. Lipinski provided the report for committee review on the monthly spending without comment. That's all I have.
Thanks, Marty. Can I have a motion to accept the consent items?
I'll
So
moved.
moved.
make the motion.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I
John
said so moved.
Okay, I'll second, Marty.
Okay,
Okay.
so Sultan and Bonfils?
No.
Thank you. All right, roll call vote. Allen,
Approve.
Mr. Bonfils,
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes,
Oblis,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
and Mr. Sultan.
Yes.
Unanimous with the absence of Mr. Moody, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we don't have any action items. We don't have any new business. We don't have any informational items. The monthly reports, does anybody have a question for Brian on his finance summary? Any questions for Alton on his Water Resources Management monthly report? And are there any questions for Way on the water and sewer agreements? I don't believe there's any items to go into a closed meeting. In fact, I don't even know how we would go into a closed meeting. So I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Okay.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Roll
Oh,
call.
there's the gongs. It must be a time to end.
Roll call vote. Mr. Allen,
I approve.
Mr. Bonfils,
Approved.
Mr. Byers,
Approved.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
approve.
Mr. Koblis,
Yes.
Ms. Sursakar,
Yes.
and Mr. Sultan.
Yes, that was my grandmother clock that you caught.
Everybody
you.
be safe and social distance, please.
Thanks, sir.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you. All right.